Hello, hello, hello. I'm Chris Rakakis.
And I am Michael Thiemann, and you have guests with you today.
Oh, yeah, we got some very special guests today. So let's start back here.
So, I'm Jürgen Fuhrmann from Biophysics Institute for Applied Analysis and Stochastics, which is the place where this podcast is being recorded. And I'm there the deputy head of the numerical analysis group, and I'm doing the Julia package Warner FEM.gl and a couple of others.
And then we also have over here.
Okay, hello, I'm Simon Christ. I'm from the Leibniz University of Hannover, where I'm a research software engineer in the Computational Biology department.
Awesome. So maybe first off, tell us about the place that you're currently in. What's the occasion?
Yeah, so the occasion is that Chris Rakakis is on the way to Norway, made some stop in Berlin, and asked to meet some friends. And I said, hey, well, good occasion. And so he gave a talk today at the Institute about SciML, very good one. And Simon came in order to be able to do this podcast, and which we are just hosting also at the Biostats Institute in a moment.
Every day is a good day for a Julia meetup. So
yeah, seems like it. And thanks for the opportunity to record on premises. And I'm sure we'll hear even more about the Biostats Institute in the future and all the contributions and work that is done over there. And so Simon, you're here today because we want to learn more about Plots.jl. Even though this is a very mature and very established package, but still you can never learn too much about your favorite packages. Before we dive into Plots.jl, a little bit about you. As far as I know, you're a biologist by training. So is that correct, actually? Oh, okay.
We're actually in the city where I studied. So I studied physics here at the Leibniz University. And then I also graduated at the MPI for colloids and interfaces in like biological physics.
Close enough. Yeah. So biology. Yeah.
And now I'm like officially in a biological department, but I'm more the computer guy and not so much about the biological details.
Well, to computer people, you're basically a biologist now. So yeah.
Probably. Yes.
Well, what does the computer guy do in the biology department?
I mean, biology is a field where, people have vast amount of data. Sometimes. And sometimes they have like sprinkles of data. But they also want to understand how processes work, and they have lots of processes that can be simulated or can, be modeled by differential equations or something. And while the average biological person does not get very much training in those things, I think they are in dire need of, more people from the computational departments. And yeah, that's how we ended there. I mean, this was kind of a lucky accident that like what is now my boss was my former mentor, and she now got a professorship, and she asked me if I want to join. And I said, yeah, sounds good.
And so you are now the computer guy in a biology department, but you've studied physics. So at some point during this career development, you picked up programming, or maybe you already did as a child, or what's your programming background and your Julia background?
Yeah, well, in the physics education, we had like 2 courses that were called computational physics, and which you had to do, and those were taught in MATLAB.
Yeah, as always. Yeah.
As always. And then we had a third one, which was optional, but which I took because I was more like on the theoretical side, where you could actually choose your own programming language, and the people don't care so much what program. And then I was like, yeah, I'm a scientist. I need something that's, that's rock solid. So I chose to make that in C. And yeah, and then, during my PhD, I was advancing more to the C++ realm, and then I got frustrated enough that I tried Julia.
All right,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I met you from what it would have been like 2016 or 2017 or so. You would have started asking a bunch of questions on using differential equations, and you would have gotten pretty deep into it pretty fast. So were you already doing a lot of the modeling? Like, were you doing it with C already? Because I know that you're always
I'm mostly doing like agent-based simulations, and I was trying to couple those to solving boundary value problems with singularities at both ends. And so I had already a kind of a C++ simulation for me working, and then I tried can't be so difficult to integrate this with some ODE solver.
You had to change the language when you got to that.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I tried to integrate this C ODE solver in my C++ code, and I was like getting these can't convert const star reference to star reference const or something. And I was like, I don't want to deal with this. And then, I tried to look around, and I looked at Julia before, actually, in my studies. I heard about it, and I was like, it's not even 1.0. Why should I, deal with breaking changes every half a year? And then it was like 0.6 or so, and I was like, okay, I'm trying it.
Good enough, yeah.
There's this guy called Chris Rokakis, and he's doing some ordinary differential equations, and it looks really good. And he has nice benchmarks. And so I tried it, and then I found, boundary value problems are not on this schedule right now. But I can poke him enough. And this was really, I mean, when you start coming into programming, you have this, you think everything is done, things are static, use some operating system or some library, and that's the way it is, and it will never change. And then, you realize, it only doesn't change because my systems administrator was not updating the system for 20 years. And then you go, okay. And then I was like, so Julia is in development, and I can, be kind of part of it and influence the process and make the software happen that I want to use. And I think this was really a compelling thing that I wanted, that I stuck to the language.
And so one more bit of trivia about you before we come back to the Julia programming story. Your GitHub username is Beastly Blacksmith. So I'm just curious about what's the story behind this.
Well,
you don't appear beastly to me, I have to say.
You're not seeing him in person. I can concur. He is very beastly.
Yeah. Well, it's essentially it's a gamer tag that I reuse things from the past in the future, and mostly when I'm in doing accounts, it's mostly related. Before I went to university, I was playing a game that is called Ragnarok Online. It's like a MMORPG of the early times. And there was a a class that was called Battle Blacksmith, and then
Uh,
because I wasn't so creative, I just make an acronym or a name out of that acronym that kind of stuck. And every time I need it, it's a name that's rarely taken for some reason.
well, it's yours now forever, I guess. It's a very recurring theme with the people. It's like we were playing video games as kids, and so we were always staying close to computer programming and development, and then eventually people developed Julia. So the what I like from the story is, okay, you've seen that there was still development to be done, but you just said, okay, I'm gonna dive right into it. And now for the main event, I guess. In 2019, the public commit history says you started committing to Plots.jl. So I guess now it's a very mature, heavy duty. Everybody or many people use it. It's one of the main plotting packages, with obviously Maki being the alternative. But tell me about your experience in 2019. Was Plots.jl already the front runner in those days, or what was it like?
I mean, I would say more so than today. Like I'm constantly amazed about how much code Tom was, like the original author of Plots, was able to dish out.
Tom did so much, yeah.
in like 2 years or so. And it's like a big, I don't know, it's like a heritage that we now try to maintain. And back in the days, I mean, it all makes sense when you know that I graduated in 2020. So that was the time when I started writing my thesis. And
you needed better visualization, so you're like, I'm gonna fix this myself.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it was like I was really driven by this notion. I mean, in physics, it's like people develop code, and then every 3 years the codes get dumped, and new people come and write new code, and so people write the same code over and over. And I'm really like, that's not really efficient. And so I got, fixated on this, reproducible science theme. And so I also wanted to write my thesis in a reproducible setting, so that, if you find a bug, you don't need to rewrite your whole thesis. It will update automatically. So I needed to integrate my visualizations in a programmatical way. And since I wrote in LaTeX, it also needs to be LaTeX plots. And the backend back then was PGF plots, which was written by Patrick Kuffold, who was doing the optimization stuff also. And then it lacked some features that I needed. And then I saw, there's a new PGF plots interface that was written by Christopher Carson. And I was like, why did no one, update the wrapper? It's so obvious. And then I looked at the last commits and I was like, yeah, it's not because nobody thought of it, it's because there's nobody who does it. And then I figured, well, if I write an issue complaining about somebody should do that, then I would be pretty sure that, that it's been an issue for like 5 years, and I need to write my thesis without it. And so I said, yeah, well, okay, if nobody is, then spend a week and do it yourself. And then I set a week off, and then I wrote the backend. I mean, I copied all the stuff from the old backend, and then I extended the backend to do all the stuff that it does it today. And that's basically how it went. I mean, I did some smaller changes before, but that was like the biggest thing.
Yeah, well, I think like the big thing there was like I think Tom really created the library at first, right? Like Tom what's the name? It starts with a B.
Right.
Tom Bredoff, yeah, he really created this whole library at the start. I think it was like 2014 or so. By 2016, he was kind of I think he got hired by some AI firm or something, and he just like had to start working on a bunch of closed source code, and he's kind of gone. So then for a while it was me and Michael Beauregard, right? And but Mike had to, I believe that he was up for his tenure evaluation in like 2018 or so, right? So he kind of disappeared a little bit from the open source community because of the tenure evaluation. I think then you were looking at it, you're like, oh, why don't we just do this this backend and this backend? You just start opening up some PRs, and then I think I might have given you the committer access. I was like, this guy knows what he's doing. And so, yeah, you fix one backend, you fix the second backend, now you're in charge of all the backends, right? And I think you've done really well with it. Yeah, you're now the plots guy.
Somehow, yeah. I never asked for it. But yeah, there was also Daniel Schwabeneder, who did quite a lot of stuff in between, I don't know, 2017 and 2020, I guess. Who I learned a lot from, actually. He did good stuff. But it's a continuous process where people come after each other.
Yeah, I think that Plots.jl is like this it's a very nice example of a package that has seen this continuity and new maintainers coming and everything. I think most people wouldn't even know that story, that like it's shifted hands like 4 or 5 times, because again, like no one is actually paid to ever work on plots, right? What do you do? Do you call yourself a person who works on a plotting package?
No.
But you might say no.
But I try to find reasons to do it.
Yeah,
That's why the paper is there. I can say, well, it also produces a paper, so it's beneficial for my work.
Yeah, it's always been this kind of piece where just like nobody is like, oh, this is what I do with my life, right? But there's always people around who's always kind of jumped in and did a lot of parts, and I think that over time you've really become the plotting master. So
I think what amazes me most is a package that is just if you work with a scientific programming mindset, you just know that there needs to be a plotting package, right? And it seems to be so basic that it might almost be intimidating to start thinking, okay, this is something that I can fix. In particular, maybe if so you talked about differential equations and boundary value problems. I mean, this is something where even from your training, I guess, you had a lot of experience. Okay, there's this algorithm, and if I look in the textbook, then I just need to translate the algorithm into code. But like plotting is so fundamental, or at least it seems to me, that I would have no clue how to start. And so to say, okay, I'm going to start and I'm going to just pull it in and make it happen, and it will be a week out of thesis writing. I mean, this is amazing, right?
I mean, you work with the library before. It's not that I start at 0. And also, learn about the fundamental concepts before and how things are structured from a higher viewpoint, I say, as a user. And then once you start looking into small issues, and then you start bigger issues, and then at some point you know how the pipeline is and where you need to look for things. And once you're at that stage, you kind of, you have the mindset of, okay, theoretically I can change anything. It's just, taking a lot of work.
Mhm.
And then you can also make a good estimate about, how much work is actually some issue. And then, it's 4 times the work that you estimate, but it's still a reasonable estimate.
So with this particular setting in mind, would you say that your prior experience with C and C++ helped you not being afraid of whatever is in there? Or one of the sayings that goes far in the Julia community is obviously, well, everything is written in Julia, so there's just nothing to be afraid of diving deep into any library. Is that something that really happened with the plots when you started developing it?
Yeah, of course, it's a huge benefit that it's, that at least the part that Plots touches is Julia code. Because I need to tell that, Plots is not a plotting package. Plots is like a unified plotting API that has its own set of issues in a way, but it also makes things easier because you can just delegate to the backend things, like displaying the actual stuff on the display. You just say, well, I want the plot to look like this, and then it displays because the backend already implemented. So a lot of the nitty-gritty details you don't have to care so much about. And I would say from a conceptual point of view, Plots is pretty easy. There are no really fancy algorithms going on. There's no...
Well, I might counter that a little bit, right? Because like I think that there's something pretty beautiful to the recipe system, right?
Yeah.
And the pipeline around. I mean, Tom definitely brought in a lot of ideas around the alias handling and like what does it mean to be a keyword argument to be able to capture a lot of other keyword arguments
Yeah.
and then the way that the recipes recurse and everything. So I do think
Yeah,
that there's
I
something
think,
interesting. Yeah.
I don't mean there's not a lot of thought put into the architecture of the library. I just say you don't need much theory
Yeah.
to understand what's going on. And the parts of the library that have a lot of recursion are the more difficult ones, but they also make it powerful. And in kind of a, in a scholarship sense, it's easy algorithms, dealing with either. But then it's also complicated because it's many things you need to take care of in a plotting library, and they all interact with each other. So
Yeah, what do you think is the hardest part? I've always said that the hardest part of a lot of it was where to place annotations using like text inputs and stuff like that, right? Like getting everything. What do you think is like the hardest or most sensitive part of that pipeline?
layouting is the most difficult part.
Mm-hmm.
It's nested in a way, that's one of the recursive parts of the library. And then if you change, if you want to change the layouting in a few different places, and then, in a recipe, you might want to influence the layouting, and then at a later stage, you might want to process what the users put in. And then also some parts you don't really can get in a way that's predictable. How long is a given string on the screen depends on your font.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that's sometimes not easy to get out of a backend if it writes to a LaTeX file.
I imagine it's impossible to tell, right? If you write it out to text file, then the text compiling system will take care of.
Theoretically and it's practically impossible, kind of, but also you can read the font file and search for stuff, which we don't do. But
Always more heuristics to add, which means any viewers who want to contribute to making the plot library better, you know who to talk to start making your contributions.
Yeah, I'm happy to get you on board.
Throwing some ideas out there. When you started, Plots was prior to 1.0, but half a year later, the 1.0 release was put out there. So what was the thought process behind, okay, this is a important package, we're now in the state where we are pretty sure this will be stable, let's make this the official 1.0?
Yeah, well, a good indicator is if your version number is 0.35.27. But also, at some point, I mean, API is also a thing that's really hard to define in terms of a plotting library. But the basic API, like if you break it down, Plots has like 4 functions that you use, and they didn't change over 5 years. You just say, well, that's how it is now.
But the other thing that I understand is that there's currently a 2.0 in the works. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that's mainly because of Julia 1.10, which changed something about how you can, or what you can do when Julia precompiles. Because Plots was written in a very early stage of Julia, where, for example, package extensions was not a thing, and yet it wanted to, interface with different Julia libraries at runtime. And so it did kind of all nasty tricks about evaluating code for you in different modules.
Plots is the original @eval using library, which it was never, Julia as a language was never meant to be that dynamic at the time. But well, I mean, until probably like 2019, right? Plots never even depended on GR, right?
It always depended on GR, but that was because that should work without installing a different package.
Well, it's still been using until you made the first plot, right?
That's
so
true.
Yeah, so like it was always dynamically using the back, like calling using on the back end and everything. So Plots has been very, very, very dynamic since the beginning, and how it had its own functions for how it would pull in new libraries and such. So I guess then for the 2.0 here, are you making it so that way it's actually going to use like real standard features for this for the first time ever? All right.
I mean, but that's why it's a breaking change, because you now have to explicitly load the library you want to use as a backend. And that's the only reason why it's a breaking change, but it's also a good opportunity to get in all the breaking changes that I told people we can't do it, which is like...
How big is that list?
It's not that big, actually. It's like, I would say 10 to 15 PRs, but it's also on a slow program. So, because, it's not my main job and I have a family and stuff, and there are not too many people working on it, but you can join. It's a good opportunity to get all the breaking changes you always wanted. I don't know. I don't want to make any statements about when it will happen, but it might happen.
All right, it'll be done by the time this podcast is done. So you get another screen over there. It'll be going. So what are some of the bigger breaking changes that we to potentially be aware of? Anything on the line width is now LW is no longer allowed for line width, or like that one I just kind of made up of. But what are some like the real breaking changes that some
I think the biggest breaking change I want to do, whether I do it or not is not on the table, but I want to get rid of implicit cycling, which is like if you make a plot with the view series and then you say like something like color equals red, black, and then it will cycle red and black all the way through all the series without you specifically asking for it. And that's sometimes neat It has its value. But several times in the past, it caused me major headaches because it also does that for recipes. And if you chain a bunch of recipes, and somewhere in there, some arguments get cycled without you noticing, somehow your graph recipes are looking bonkers because I don't know, you know? And that's why I don't want to have that. I haven't done any work on it, but it might come.
Well, what are some of the you said there's like 15 PRs here of other breaking changes people are proposing. What are some of the other things that people are throwing around that you're considering as part of this as well?
I mean, the one that I actually started working on is there was some implicit padding in especially the GR backend that you have some white space on the borders, and people who wanted to have very tight layouts always complained because in order to get a tight layout, you then need to set a negative margin.
Yeah, it's like -5 px. Yeah.
And so we want to change that in that release, that 0 gives you 0 margin. And that's not as easy as you would think. And then we want to move some stuff around, like there's this macro going that makes you an easy interface for data frames or any tables like thing that's currently in stats plots, and we want to move that to plots.
Are there any backends that could potentially get deprecated? Because I know that some of the backends were kind of developed further, a long time ago. I think that there's some like data inspector ones or something that I'm not So are there also plans to move every backend to this new system, or are some of them going to?
I mean, the ones that were already deprecated will be removed. So that's PyPlot because it's replaced by Python plots, and PGF plots because it's replaced by PGF plots X. InspectDR still works.
Okay.
It's not, it's not feature complete, but it still works. So I don't think, until they stop working, we will try to keep things. But also, unless you volunteer to become primary maintainer of the thing you propose to add, we won't add any new backends, I say.
Okay, yeah, because I know that 1.0 can really be a section where you just not only are you doing the final changes that you want to the API, but a lot of times you might also kind of go, oh, we're also going to cull this, and this, because that'll make things a bit easier for us in the future because they're less used, kind of thing. Sounds like you're most of this 1.0 is you're really going to be taking the features that you have, with a few of these breaking changes that you've always wanted to do them now, but you're going to try to pull every feature you can with it, right?
Yeah, kind of. But also, I try to make it incremental enough that it doesn't disrupt anything, or not too much. And it's still workable in a time frame with limited developer time, I'd say. I think that's the most limiting factor that we have right now.
So I want to touch and go deeper on this comment on not break any things or not break any workflows. I mean, seeing that plots is a very fundamental need for large parts of the community, how is the interaction with the technical aspects of the code and the communal aspects of the code, if you will? Like, do you get a lot of emails saying, this feature suddenly doesn't work for me anymore, or I absolutely want to have this feature removed, like you mentioned, the implicit color cycling, or other people say, if you remove this, I'm going to switch over to another package and will yell angrily about it?
Well, I think there is one that is contentious, right? The name aliasing can get contentious sometimes.
Yeah, for some people. I mean, there are many things that people like to discuss, especially if it's about aesthetics.
Mhm.
Even if it's like only the default color palette.
The default color palette. Yeah. The amount of discussions you can have about default color palette, I think that we've only probably seen 1% of it, and it's been way too much.
Yeah.
But if you want to use, for our listeners at home, if you want to help the algorithm gods, engage in the discussion below.
Yeah,
What's your favorite color palette? Yeah.
Put in the comments what you think the default color palette is. Right now, I think it's blue, then orange, right? But then you're like, oh, other plotting libraries, they default to like black and then red and then green. Then you're like, oh, but color blindness. Like the conversation could go on forever. But yeah, but put down below what you believe the best color palette should be for the defaults.
Yeah. I would also point out that you can change the defaults if you don't like.
Oh yeah, there's the whole plot themes and plot styles. I think that Patrick originally did a lot of that. Yeah, and that was really nice because then you can just say, okay, I want to use like a cool theme. I want to use a warm theme, and yeah.
And most of this still looks great, I say.
Mhm.
But also, it takes some time. So I get why defaults are important. But I also think that discussion, I had a poll on Discourse, and I think it's settled now. I don't want to reopen the can.
You know what I like about the plots defaults though? I like that it's blue and orange because most people would never choose the colors blue and then orange. And so if I ever see a plot with 2 lines inside of a scientific article that's blue and then that orange, I know that it's Plots.jl. I'm like, oh hey, this person used Julia, right? Like instantly know that color palette really rings out. And then you also kind of go, oh, but the default line width is a bit too small. So you definitely in the breaking change, you should change the default line width. But
I'm waiting the PR. No, yeah, totally. Now is the point to do that.
Well, what are some other points that people are going to have in this discussion on just to share with the viewers all like all the things that you have to
it's
hear
whether
about.
your legend point size should scale with be the actual point size of the points in this plot, or if it should be scaled to the text size of the legend. There are 10 different opinions on that, and we can only implement one. And I still don't like how we ended up, because now in the end, some backends do the one thing and some backends do the other thing. Which kind of, if you want the one thing, use this backend. If you want the other thing, use that backend. Yeah.
What about a default legend placement? Right.
That's not a hot topic, actually.
Oh, really?
That's not a hot topic. But color bars are.
Oh, color bars. Yeah.
So color bars are pretty important. It seems to be.
Yeah, I think that the point to get across though is that when you start talking about the aesthetics of a plotting package, I think everyone tends to have their opinion, but I think the thing that I've learned is that everyone has a different opinion about something.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like currently, the plots repo has like 700 open issues and lots of discussions in there. I don't know. My philosophy is that it should be fine in most cases what the defaults are, and you should be able to get a result that you want. But then it's not guaranteed that it's easy to get there.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, I think Tom Berleff mentioned very well that it's like simple things should be easy and complex things should be possible, right? And I think that it is achieving it, and for the most part, right? Maybe some 3D things or some interactive things might be a bit hard, and you go, okay, just go to Mach-E for that bit. But I think that in general, the plot that you get very easily, I'm pretty impressed, especially these days, that you get something that's pretty close, publication ready without too many tweaks.
Yeah. And I'm also, I mean, kind of what took me to, to like plots is that I was also like, during my study, I used MATLAB, Mathematica, GNU plot, Qt plot. I don't know, all these plotting libraries, because, plotting is a vital part of science. And they all have a different API and a different concepts. And then you have graph graphics and stuff. And at some point I was like, I don't want to deal with it. It's such a, I don't know, time sink to learn new graphic concepts all the time just to get the pictures I want. That I was like, yeah, a unified interface doesn't make sense. So that's why I am keeping the flame here to get this library going, because I think that's a value in itself beyond having a nice API.
And the other thing that maybe comes with this, or something that you mentioned earlier, is plots is maybe not singular, but definitely one of the packages that has a publication associated with it in the Journal of Open Source Software, right? And I think you both are authors on this. I think, Simon, you're the first author.
He's the
Actually,
lead.
he's the lead.
That spot.
So
It's a different genre, but it has a publication.
what's your experience? What's the story behind the publication?
Since it's not my job working on plots, I need a kind of way to justify that I do it nevertheless.
You need the academic currency of citations. Yeah.
And that's when we started and we built a new group, and I had some time to think about what do I want to do in my new role, and then I said, this should be part of it, because I spent so much, like it was like 2 years that I interacted with the library before, and I felt like this was something that increases value in what I do, and that's what I wanted it to continue to do, and that's why I also wanted to conserve like the knowledge that I have about the library, so that it doesn't go extinct, and that's why I started writing the paper, and then get the people on board to contribute to the paper.
Yeah, and this, I think we do this PSA for like every episode, and this is a reminder, dear viewers. This is why you cite your packages, and cite the packages you use in every paper and every grant application, because it helps a guy like this, be able to find the time and be able to find the funds and everything to continue working on the packages that you're using. So cite your packages, and also like, comment, and subscribe to this video.
It also makes me happy when I see the results of people using the library.
Yeah.
And I guess the question is also, I don't know exactly what the statistics are, how many people have published a specific publication specifically about their package, but I'm guessing specifically in the Julia ecosystem that there's a lot of packages that would be worth having that there's very specific publication that people should be able to cite. So when is the time, and who are the people to put together a publication for everyone's favorite package?
I mean, that's a really difficult question, because for a developer, it's kind of pointless. It's like wasted time on writing something that could be documentation or it could be code. So I think that's, in a sense, it's a special treat for the people who are in science and wanting to, to get value out of their open source contributions. As sad as this is,
Yeah, but I mean, like something like Plots, though, is so fundamental that, I mean, if everyone who was using Plots in their scientific publication actually cited Plots, oh, it would be your highest cited publication by far, forever and beyond, right? Like that would be the one that in your tenure evaluation kind of thing. Like they would look at that and just go, "That's your 3,000 citation paper," right? Now, I think the thing is, most people don't end up citing their plotting library and everything, but but it's still
But it's improving.
It's improving pretty fast, yeah. And definitely like it'll be something that you can kind of show like this is a pretty substantial thing that you've done, and it can capture that history and in a nice way that you can show in a currency that academics understand.
But I don't think that there will be a second publication for the 2.0 version.
Probably not, but you never know. And but maybe also a shorter one. I don't know. There's still the Journal of Open Source Software that don't. I wanted to have a longer publication for the first one because I wanted to do like thorough. This is the architecture of the library stuff. But then for 2.0, we could make a shorter paper. But then I don't really know what's the value of that because people still, it's good if there's one paper that you can cite for software.
You kind of just want one place that everyone just goes to, so that way it collects all the citations. That does mean it has the downside, though, right? That new people who come along, if they start contributing, they won't necessarily become an author on that. I think that is something where it'd be really nice if one of these like open source software journals came up with a thing to be able to add an author 2 years later, right? Because for example, Yingbo Ma should be on the differential equations.jl paper, but it was just published before he started doing his part. So that kind of happens. And
I mean, what we do is we actually have a .zenodo JSON in our repo, and then for every version that we register, the actual list of contributors is pulled from that Zenodo file. So for every version, you see who's part of the contributors.
Mm-hmm.
So that does update every version, but it's not a publication, but you get a DOI for every version.
So I guess what we're saying is the problem of proper credit giving is still unsolved with respect to package maintenance and open source contributions in academia.
Pretty much, yeah. And you also, like, if you want to be really good at citing, cite the paper and cite the DOI of the version you use. That's really cool.
Also, maybe the back end as well, right? I think that ESF has something for GR. So, I mean, there's a lot of things you could cite as well. And getting the proper attribution to everyone in the scientific stack, I think, is still pretty unsolved. And it would be good if there's good tools to help people out. Yeah, I think we're a bit away.
I mean, there's this one tool like this bibliography, that goes through your project file and finds all the citations for all the things you use. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really cool package.
One thing now moving beyond plots that you mentioned is you are very strong believer and interested in reproducible science. What are the biggest obstacles that you still see with respect to reproducible science that you would solve if Plots.jl has put its 2.0 out and the load on that is maybe a little bit reduced?
There are many obstacles. And, if you go down the rabbit hole, basically you can't do reproducible science, actually. But you can do your best effort to get it as reproducible as you can. My main concern is actually to get people on the broader scale to actually do it. There's no sense in having the perfect pipeline that is really as reproducible as you could, and then you're the only person who does it. So I try to to spread the basic education of people there, the digital literacy as people call it, That's also why during my PhD, I became a carpentries instructor and started building the Julia carpentries lesson. I think that's the bigger obstacle to get the people to do it, because there's little incentive in the scientific how things get done. It's always, oh, I need to write a paper, I need to get it quick. I don't care about reproducibility.
And what do you think is like the biggest impediment to you know I guess the big thing here is like not making reproducible science itself, but making reproducible science the standard science, right?
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest impediment to making reproducible science the standard way to do science?
I think it's the incentives, actually. I think the incentives are so misaligned with actually, having things done thoroughly instead of having many things done quickly. People just don't even reflect on, could I have done this better?
And so unfortunately, the takeaway here is that this is not a technical challenge that needs addressing from the community, but needs to be a different conversation in academia itself, it seems.
I mean, it's both. It's a technical problem that reproducible science is so difficult, and it's a social issue that is so non-valued.
But from what I heard, I had the impression that your take is increasing the awareness about the problem and enabling people to a point where their technical obstacles are so much lowered that their personal goodwill is improved to contribute reproducible science.
Yeah, I mean, I like the slogan of the Turing Way, who do an open book about this. So they have the slogan of making it too easy not to do. It's a good goal, but in reality, we also have a way to go to get there.
What are some concrete things that you yourself are going to be looking at introducing into your own science, or even contributing to the Julia ecosystem to be able to make it so that way, it's a one step easier?
I mean, that's also one part that really convinced me to stay in Julia, is the package manager who ensures a rather reproducible environment, and second, that it's not so difficult to use, and third, that we now do have reproducible binary distribution stuff, and also these niceties. And also this vague sense that people in the Julia community value reproducibility also to quite some extent that other programming language communities don't do that much. That aligned with my incentives to it's easier to do reproducible science with Julia than without Julia, I'd say. In few things that people are not aware of it.
So do you have anything that you plan to be adding to the workflow in your future here, or anything that you'll be incorporating into your workflow that is kind of new to you? Any new package that you're starting to use or starting to build along these lines?
No, not really. I mean, the thing is that now that I graduated, I don't actually do much stuff anymore. I'm more in the supervising students and teaching and caring for our work group and the RSE community in Germany thing. I tried to what I learned during my I think at the end I had a very good workflow on doing reproducible documents, for example, and so I tried to give that to the younger generations so that they don't have to spend 3 years getting there.
Taking a very long view, if in the future the next generation that you helped educate and train in these matters, and they take up your calling and the efforts multiply to the even second generation and beyond, like, what is the bit of Julia that will still keep you coming back if Plots 2.0 is done and the reproducible science is put onto the next generation?
You mean what would be my Julia project if I had really
Lots and lots of spare time. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, what's your Julia project that you work on after midnight?
I mean, what's funny about, I have this other package that's called Protostructs that was while I was, writing code, and I was like, oh, I need to restart my Jira session every time. It's so annoying. And then Christopher told me, oh, you can just use a name tuple as a backend and, do some manipulation, then it will effectively be a redefinition. And I was like, yeah, that would solve all my problems. So then I wrote the library, and then I never used it again. And so that's how that goes. But people do use it, and people do also make PRs. So I'm happy about that. So it seems to be useful. Yeah, but I think actually I would stay with Plots for the time being, and actually my hope is to get it on some solid ground somehow, so that it's not so dependent on short time people's effort, but that there is also a long-term people effort behind this. I mean, also I think we have we launched a web service last year in October about, from our working group, where you can optimize your RNA sequences for different organisms if you want to. I think that's quite cool, and I think there's also, but I made while doing that, we used Plotly for that, for the web interface.
And you just change the back end, and boom, now it's yeah. That's a good thing with back end changes.
Well, it's the good thing that you are in charge of the library you use. You can just change the things that you don't like or that don't work. So that came in handy a few times. It's true. But also I found that this Plotly bridge is something that could be improved still.
Mm-hmm.
Because it lags behind in a few features, and I don't think it's a priority at the company anymore, if it ever was. I don't know.
Oh, at Dash, yeah. I'm not sure whether, but yeah, I haven't looked at what Dash does with Plotly these days.
Yeah.
But it seems to still work fine. So
yeah.
Chris, do you have any more questions to our guest?
I don't know. I think that well, I do want to get one spicy take to end it or something. So I guess this is plotting spicy take. If there's one major style change you could do, so the default style of plots, that you're not going to do it because other people are opposed to this idea. What would you change with the default style that you just like? I wish I believe that all the axis lines should always be pink by default, right? What's your spicy take there that you're like, okay, I'm gonna hold that back because no one else is gonna agree with me.
I would never. I think I would erase yellow from all the color palettes in the world, I guess.
Even a finite element like surface plots and stuff, you'd still get rid of the yellow.
Yeah, I think yellow shouldn't be on plots.
Oof, that's a spicy take. A lot of the standard heat map. Okay, well, comment down below. In the YouTube comments or whatnot. Even if you're watching this on Spotify, get open YouTube right now and tell me yes, I believe that yellow should be gone from every color palette. I mean, you only got a limited amount of time here before the 1.0 is done, right? So if you really believe that this is the case, we could get a crusade to get rid of yellow here. But oof, that's a spicy one. I don't know if I'm I don't know if I'm on that trip.
Yeah, so I hope we have not opened up a too large can of worms here.
I was hoping to open up a can of worms right there.
We'll see what happens here. I just want to say thank you so much, Simon, for taking us on this tour.
Thank you for having me.
It was a great pleasure to learn so much more about something that seems so fundamental and so ubiquitous to so many people in the community, and to get this inside view.
Plotting with things that people often take it for granted and forget that it's not.
It's a thing that people don't comment about as much when it's working well. But when it doesn't work, you instantly get the comments, right? So it's definitely the kind of like, you know, the hidden it's, you know, you're the one working in the shadows to make everyone else, you know, more happy than they've ever realized. So I'd say thank you to you as well. I mean, you know, as someone who did do some of the maintenance for like a year, you really kind of took it on when, you know, when some of us were like, oh, I don't know if I have the time. And you've now done it for longer than anyone else. And you've been so this is the guy who's really keeping it alive. And everyone should thank him for the work he's doing.
And also, if any listeners out there at home are now motivated to help make the 2.0 backend restructuring a faster reality, or just jump into the task that everybody has to do, not as their main job right now, feel free to do so. It's very important work.
You know, talk to him.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like support for this. Jürgen was even over here. He's like nodding. He's like, yeah, that seems like a good idea. So I don't know. I guess if everyone's for it.
Yeah. And also, thanks that you mentioned, Chris. Thanks again, Jürgen, for giving us the space and time. It's late at night now. People still have to be awake to record this episode. So thanks to everybody to have made this possible.
Thank you, and see everyone in the next episode.
Bye.
See you then. Bye.